Welcome, everybody. This is Mr. Brew, and this is your first class of the basic middle school math curriculum. This is basically just going to give you your foundations and make sure that you're ready for pre-algebra and algebra. The only thing that I hope you for sure know is your times tables, 1 through 12. You got to know that 7 times 8 is 56. All right. You also have to know some other little things like a triangle has 3 sides. There's 12 inches in a foot. All right. And it would be really great if you knew things like there's 5,280 feet in a mile. But if you don't know that, that's something we could work on. All right. Today, we're going to be starting on just simply place value and number forms and comparing whole numbers, how to round them and stuff like that. All right. You should already know that 6 tens is 60 and 4 hundreds is 400. All right. We're going to take that structure into even larger whole numbers. All right. Something important that you should be able to distinguish is that the digit is a symbol. And there's 10 different symbols, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are digits. They're symbols that represent a quantity. The position in the number tells us how much that digit is worth. So if it's by itself, the number 6, it's just the number 6. If it's 60, that 6 is in the tens place, it'll be worth 60. And we'll get more into it as we go along. All right? So the first thing you need to truly understand is that every digit has a position, and every position gives that digit its value. All right? And let's move on to place value and the base 10 number patterns. All right, here you could see we have a bunch of number 7s across the board. All right? We don't have decimal points yet, but you can always assume from now on that there's a decimal point after the last digit. All right? And again, each digit has a position, and that position gives it its value. So when you're looking at the 7, right here in the ones place, that's worth 7 ones, or 7. As we go to the left, you'll multiply by 10. So this 7 is in the tens place, and it's worth 70. This digit is in the 10,000s place, so it's worth 70,000. All right. Also, you may or may not know this yet. 10 to the 4th simply means it's a 1 with 4 zeros. 10 to the 3rd is a 1 with 3 zeros. 10 to the 0 is a 1 with 0 zeros. 10 to the 1st is a 1 with 1 0. All right, not essential now, but it's a good little thing to consider, and we're going to get more into exponents as we move forward. All right. So, let me ask you a question, and you can respond in the chat. If I have the number 4,683,215. Want me to say it again? 4,683,215. What is the value of the digit 8? I'll write it out for you right here. 4,685,215. In the chat, tell me what is the value of the number 8? All right, I'm seeing some answers come in. And the answer is 80,000. All right, if you thought maybe it's 10,000s, 10,000s is the position, 80,000 is the value. All right, so let's get into the different forms that these numbers can take. All right, here we have 482,306. You're going to read one period at a time, and each period is separated by a comma. So you understand that this is 482. So you say 482,306. There's no qualifier for the last one you say. So you say each comma as 100, like 482, and then you explain which period. The second period is the thousands period, and then the ones period, you just say it regular. Don't use the word and. You sound uneducated when you say the word and. 482,306 is not as precise. Say 482,306. All right, and the commas will divide these periods, and the most each period can have is 3 digits. Does that make sense? Also, we can now build this out and write it in extended form. So, 400, let me write that down for you. So when we have the number 482,306, the way you write that out in expanded form would be to write 400,000 plus 80,000 plus 2,000 plus 300. You don't have to write anything for the 0, and then plus 6. That's how you would write it in expanded form. So, in the chat, if you could, can you explain to me what number this is? I want you to write the number in standard form. I'm giving it to you in expanded form. What is this number in standard form? Please write it in the chat. All right, and you should all seem to be getting it right. It's 96,435. All right, now we're going to have to be able to compare whole numbers. All right, so here's two numbers, and we need to know which one is bigger or smaller. All right, one thing you should already know, but I'm not going to assume, so let's go over it. I want you to be very clear that this symbol means less than, and this number means greater than. All right, one way that you can always kind of go over that in your head and make sure that you understand is to write something very simple like 1 is less than 2. All right, you're always going to point to the lower number, or you're going to have the alligator eat the bigger number, right? And then once you write that, here the alligator eats the 2, or the arrow points to the 1. So now you can realize that this means less than, and this means greater than. And that's simply because you're able to reconfigure it in your head by saying 1 is less than 2 or 2 is greater than 1. And you'll always have these buttons on your keyboard and stuff, so it's a great tool. And it's going to help you with your vocabulary. I don't know if it's good or bad, but when you speak with the proper vocabulary, people think you're intelligent. All right? That's just the way it is. So the better you get with your definitions and your vocabulary words, the better off you're going to be. All right, so let's get back to our problem. We have 6,307,415. And I want you to try to say it to yourself. What's the second number? Remember, say the period. So say the number and then which period, the number and then which period, the number and then which period. All right, you should be saying to yourself, 6,370,145. Now, how do we decide which number is greater than or less than? All right, we're going to start on the left because those numbers hold the highest value. 6 million and 6 million are the same. 300,000 and 300,000 are the same. 0 in the 10,000s place is less than 7 in the 10,000s place. Therefore, the 0 is less than 7. So now we know that 6,307,415 is less than 6,370,145. Once we find the first different place, the digits further right do not get a vote in this process, okay? The millions digits are equal. The 100,000 digits are equal. The 10,000 digits, 0 is less than 7. All right, do not begin with the digits on the right because the places further left have a greater value. Next thing we're going to work on is ordering. All right, you got to be able to write your numbers in the proper order given whatever numbers you're given. So, hypothetically speaking, let's say we're given these numbers: 81,742, 81,274, and 81,427. You want me to put some more space in there? All right, can you read it a little bit better now? All right, I want you to put these numbers in order. All right, all of them have the number 81,000, 81,000, 81,000. So that's all irrelevant. In the hundreds place, we have 3 different numbers. We have a 7, 100, we have a 200, and we have a 400. So if we're going to put them in order, what's the lowest number? 2 or 200. So 81,274 is the smallest number, which is less than the next smallest number is the 400. So 81,427, which is less than the last number on our list, 81,742. All right? And you should start seeing that this stuff is going to start being kind of intuitive. All right? So, now what I want to know is, are you able to, let's give you an example and see if you could do it on your own. All right? Respond in the chat. Let me put these three numbers in here. That's the one we already did. Simply use the greater than or less than symbol in the chat. For this number right here. These two numbers right here. First, practice saying it. Then, in the chat, simply use a greater than or less than symbol to tell me which one you should do it. Then, please tell me which place is the place that made you determine your answer. Very good. I'm seeing some correct answer. We're supposed to be looking at the tens place, and the 0 is less than the 9. Or 09 is less than 90. And you should be able to say that number, 305,809. All right. So now we're going to move on to rounding. If we're given a number and we're told to round to the nearest whatever, there's two things we need to look at. We need to look at the target. So here, if we're told to round to the nearest 1,000, we need to look at the 2, which is in the thousands place. The next thing we need to look at is its neighbor. The neighbor will determine what we're going to do. So, the 2 is the target, the 6 is the neighbor. If the neighbor is between the digits 0 and 4, we'll leave it alone as 582,000. If the neighbor is between 5 and 9, we're going to, quote, round up or change the 2 to a 3 to 583,000. All right? So in this case, since the neighbor is 5 or greater, it's actually 6, we're going to round up. So this is going to become 583,000. And then every digit to the right of the place where you're rounding turns into zeros. This is going to be a great trick, especially when you're trying to do some math in your head and stuff like that. You know, say there's 582,649 people that live in your city. All right, you don't have to be that precise. You could simply say there's about 583,000 people. All right, and you'll see over here, it's because here's 582,500, which is right in the middle. This number is a little bit to the right of the middle, so we're going to round up. to 583,000, if that makes sense. So, would you like to try one? Why don't you round this number, 347,218, to the nearest 10,000. Identify the target and then identify the neighbor. After you've identified the target, then the neighbor, please type your result into the chat. So this is the 10,000 place, so that's your target. So it's either going to remain a 4 or it's going to go up to be a 5. Here is its neighbor. All right, the neighbor is a big number, either 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So those of you who wrote this in the chat were correct. The 4 will become a 5, so it's 350,000 with the rest of them just zeros. That's how you round 347,218. You round it up to 350,000. Sometimes on your standardized tests and stuff like that, they're going to give you a bunch of digits. And they're going to ask you how to make the greatest digit and the least digit. So, if you're given this collection of digits, how can you arrange them to give you the largest or greatest 6-digit number? So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write all those digits in order. I'm going to reorganize them, which is a great habit to get into. So, I'm going to go, in this case, since I'm going to do the greatest digit first, I'm going to go from greatest to least. 9, and then it's always good to cross it out because that way you stay organized. 6, 5, the greatest digit left is 3. Now the greatest digit left is 2, and the last one is 0. All right, and now in this case, you need to just write the numbers in that order. That is the biggest number. 900,000 is bigger than 600,000, 500,000, etc. So it's 965,320. And yes, we do need the 0. Otherwise, it'll just be a 5-digit number. Got it? So now, and this is going to be a little bit of a trick question, we need it to be a 6-digit number. So what is the least or smallest 6-digit number that we can create with these numbers? I'll give you a second to see if you could figure that out on your own. The first thing you should be doing is arranging them from least to greatest. But this is not going to be as straightforward as the other greatest number because we can't lead the number with a 0. Otherwise, it'll just be a 5-digit number. This is not a 6-digit number. All right, because that's the same thing as just writing 23,569, which is a 5-digit number, right? So we'll have to save the 0 and write the other smallest number, which is a 2. Now you could write a 0 and then write the numbers in order from least to greatest. And that is the smallest or least 6-digit number that you can create with those 6 digits. All right. And, that's basically all the meat and potatoes of the lesson today. All right. So, let's just review really quick. The place value starts at the last digit or preferably the decimal point, which if you don't have one, you should imagine one. And then you have, the units or the ones, the tens, the hundreds. Then you have periods of thousands, millions, and billions. And the first one would be thousands, then 10,000s, then 100,000s. All right. Standard form of a word, of a number, is the regular way you know how to write numbers. The word form is to write it out, which we didn't go over, but it's, if you have 10,340, you would write the words 10-1,000, 300, 3-100, 40. Notice I said 340. So even I make that mistake sometimes, but try your best not to say the word and. When we're comparing numbers, whether it's less than or greater than, you need to know how to do that. Compare the numbers on the left first, and the first different place decides. Oh, and one thing that I'm sorry I failed to mention is the expanded form, which is when you would write, 345 is 300 plus 40 plus 5. Sorry about that. And then, as we get into comparing digits, remember if the arrow points to the left, it's less than. And if the arrow points to the right, it's greater than. And then rounding numbers, you got to look at the target, the neighbor, decide if you round up or down, and then fill the rest in with zeros. And then finally, ordering number from greatest to least. The greatest, you simply get the biggest number first and then continue to write each of the biggest numbers remaining. And the least, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to write from the smallest number first up to the greatest, but you can't lead with 0. So the first number must be a non-zero. But the second number, of course, can be a 0. So just remember, every digit has a position, and every position gives that digit its value. All right, we're going to be working on some problems together here in class as we continue. If you want to take a screenshot of these problems or pause the video so you could write them down really quick, we're going to be going over these questions together as we wrap up this lesson. And you guys should have all the tools you need. And if you have any questions, we're going to be working on them together, or you could ask them in the chat. And this is how easy the class is going to be. We're just going to go one step at a time. All right, a lot of it is going to be review because I want to teach it to you the proper way. So we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to go through all these together and make sure we're using the right vocabulary, precise definitions, and that you're reinforcing it and learning it, not just memorizing these things. Okay? And the only other thing I'll say is if you're ahead and you're feeling like this is no problem, I just want you to make sure that you know your multiplication tables. So if you aren't a master of them, please make some index cards or practice counting your multiples to yourself and try to do it in under 5 or 6 seconds. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, all the way up to 12. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132, 144. The most important thing when you're doing that is you should recognize the patterns. Math is just counting, and you're going to recognize patterns in everything you do. So, please, put in the work, because in the long run, it's going to make things so much easier. All right? Let's get started with the classwork together, and thanks for joining us.